Hey folks, I'm JP with Contentful, and you're listening to the CPG Guys.
Welcome to another episode of the CPG Guys podcast. Our hosts, Sri Rajgopalan, Peter V.S. Bond, and Brian Gildenberg explore how brands and retailers engage consumers in an increasingly digitally driven world. And now, here are the CPG Guys.
Hello and welcome to this episode of the CPG Guys podcast. I'm, of course, Sri, co-founder and co-host of the CPG Guys and also co-founder and partner of Think Blue, your key to unlocking your profitability potential. As builders, connectors, and amplifiers, we shape the future of commerce to drive your growth. Please do listen to my older daughter, Ria Raj's music, www.riaraj.com, and my younger daughter, Laura Raj, as a member of the Geffen Records Universal Music Group, Cat's Eye. While my wife, Kavita Raj, has her own podcasts, Lights, Camera, Convo, and iHeartRadio, and all streaming platforms. Cat's Eye, of course, has now debuted, done their first fan event, crossed 1 million followers on TikTok and Instagram, and growing every day. The world tour has commenced. Korea check, LA check, Manila check, Tokyo check, Western Europe is next, Paris is next, more to come. Joining me today in person, and what a privilege to be able to do that.
Coming to you live from Princeton, New Jersey.
Mr. PVS Bond. And when he's not co-hosting this podcast, he serves as partnership acceleration lead at Flywheel, a division of Omnicom that helps enterprise brands improve their SEO and SEM, growing their e-commerce business. Peter, pleasure to do this in person. How you doing, man?
I'm doing great. You know, this morning you and I had the pleasure of interviewing Mike Pearson, the CCO at Campbell's Company, here at the CGT Sales and Marketing Summit. So it's good that we can connect in person. We're closing out the baseball season. The Dodgers and Yankees in the lead of their respective leagues. Very high probability that they'll face each other in the World Series. I'm feeling pretty good. You and I can be mortal enemies once again.
For those of you who follow us, I'm a diehard Yankee fan living in Dodgers land, LA. Peter's diehard Dodgers fan living in Yankee land.
Oh, the irony.
Connecticut. That said, before we get to our guest, we'd love to share that the CPG Guys will be partnering with Cornell University to launch the Executive Education Program, a first on retail media for brands and retailers in May 2025. Audience management, joint business planning and partnership, budget planning, optimization, execution strategies, we will have it all. Meet some of the most important retail media network leaders in the space and grow together. More to come on that. And you'll find more content on that in the digital liner notes of this podcast. This year, we're also partnering with Drugstore News on December 4th at the iconic Lincoln Center on the Annual Issues Summit in its 21st edition. We will be co-presenting.
That's a lucky number.
We're honored that we were chosen to actually be the ones co-presenting 8 awards, the first ever for the Drugstore News Issues Summit. At the event, in the health and beauty care space, to both brands and retailers. We're also partnering with the Path to Purchase Institute on the annual Omni Shopper Award, Chicago, November 14th, where a select group of winners will feature on the CPG Guys.
Do we need to change our name to the Awards Guys now?
Maybe.
We're like awards.
You know, JP's going to tell us that when we ask him that question
Probably.
at the end.
Yeah.
To be part of sponsor any of these awards, get in touch with us. Contact@cpgguys.com. Again, email to contact@cpgguys. I mean, you already know how to get a hold of us, so I don't know why I'm saying this.
You can slip into our DMs, as the youngsters say.
Before we get to our guest, we want to ask you to help spread the word about this community we've created in the CPG Guys, beyond sharing podcasts with your friends, word of mouth. If you're using Apple or Spotify as your listening platform, leave us a rating. It helps feed the algorithm that makes us more findable by CPG retail people like you looking for education and entertainment, because we're hard to find. Yeah.
We are.
Yeah, we live under a cave. We're happy that the CPG Guys is part of an impressive collection of highly rated podcasts, including CPG Scoop with Risa and Jennifer, the FMCG Guys with Daniel, Efrain, and Christine. All 3 teams will be attending Grocery Shop this year in Las Vegas, October 6 to 9. Please be sure to say hello, or drop us a direct message, write a comment, just let us know you're there, and be happy to shake hands, break bread, maybe even get some coffee. Links to our podcast, our sister cast, on the social media profiles of my daughters, Ria and Laura. The wife's podcast may be found in the digital liner notes of this episode. And now, drum roll, please, the main events. You know, I say it often, but the word means a lot. So I'm going to say it again, the sentence. Today's CPG landscape has accelerated a decade in the last 4 years. I remember the McKinsey article, fall 2020, indicating it had gone forward 10 years. And that hasn't changed. And since the beginning of the pandemic, as far as omnichannel retail is concerned, this has played out. Whole maturity with the digital shopper, habits, how to build a path to purchase is emerging in the CPG industry.
Big deal.
One of the areas also near and dear to Peter that requires profound transformation is engaging customer content. Yep. AI is at the forefront, making the possibility of significantly scaling personalized message actually feasible. Today, we talk to such a guest from one such company on the mission of content, from anywhere to everywhere, and how to rapidly build experiences customers crave. Simply put, content is now a hot topic in the CPG and retail industry. This is episode 2 with Contentful. Episode 1 with them was released with Jan from VML and Nicole from Contentful. Be sure to go to www.cpgguys.com or your favorite platform and simply search for CPG Guys Podcast. You can either put the name Jan or Nicole or Contentful, and you should be able to find the episode. In this episode, we're bringing you the ongoing value proposition of Contentful, told by Jonathan Phillips, or we will lovingly call him JP. Senior Manager of Solution Engineering at Contentful. JP, man, how's it going today? Which part of this beautiful country are you at?
It's going wonderful today. I am out of the Pacific Northwest, and it is the second day of fall. I guess yesterday was the first day of fall. So excited to join you both on the podcast today. Thrilled to be here. Thank you for having me.
Does that mean you're already seeing a weather change, or is it more leaves falling?
Oh, yeah. It's so surprisingly, tomorrow, I think, is supposed to be one of the warmest days for us. It's almost 90 degrees Fahrenheit, but the leaves are changing. It's starting to cool off in the evenings. It feels great. My favorite time of year.
You know, Sri, if you'd been here like a week or two later, you could have gone leaf peep.
You know, I was hoping we'd go skiing right here in Princeton.
Maybe.
Yep. So you never know. Before we get to the detailed questions, JP, that I've prepared for you, it would be great if you gave us a brief overview of the company and your role there.
Yeah, absolutely, Sri. So Contentful is a market leader in modern CMS, and it's often called a headless or API first or a composable content platform. So we serve the entire digital team, marketers, business, developers, and builders, and empower them to create engaging experiences that brands and customers absolutely love. So we've been doing this for over a decade, starting with mobile and some more advanced use cases for omni-channel. And I've been here for about half of that journey, and excited to share with you what we've been learning around AI and the CPG space today.
Thank you so much for that summary, JP. In the digital liner notes of this episode, we will place links to, of course, your LinkedIn profile, your company's LinkedIn page, your company's website. That way, the people listening to this podcast can easily connect back with you straight from their smartphones, as most of them do. And now, JP, let's start with you. You've had quite the career in content development and tech platforms to support it that actually anchor content, without which content wouldn't actually be feasible. What was unique about Contentful that drove you to be there? And what is the role of a digital strategy team? What does a day in your life look like?
Yeah, sure. That's an excellent question. So my journey to Contentful, actually, it started like a lot of my journeys do this day and age. It started with a customer. And I was working actually with a financial services company that powers a lot of the CPG industry from a financing perspective. And they'd invested in a commerce platform and had built out a significant amount of their digital tech stack already. And they reached out to us at the time. This was several years ago now. And they said, we got to solve this problem we have here. We have people abandoning their experience with us halfway through the journey. We have folks who are basically, we don't understand why. We don't understand why that's happening. And they said, can you come in and help us do this? And said, oh, sure, I'd love to. And at the time, they'd invested in a significant amount of sort of, I call it DIY tech, but they built a lot of it in-house, right? They had, some of the major e-commerce players they were using for checkout, order fulfillment, and delivery and things like that through their financing services. But they were really struggling to bring all these technologies together. And everything they were looking for at the time kept saying, you need to buy this huge package, a suite of legacy products, and they'll all magically work well together. And so I came in and was working with them, and it was clear that they needed something different. And this was right at the forefront when Mock was becoming a household name that people understood, and people were looking for microservices and API-first technologies. And I realized I couldn't solve the problem they had with the tools I had in my backpack at that time. And I mentioned I'm from the Pacific Northwest, so we're home of lumberjacks and loggers here. And I liken it to, back in the day, people would use bandsaws to cut down trees back and forth, back and forth. It was very time consuming. It took forever. Today, you wouldn't think twice about picking up a chainsaw to cut that down. Way less time, much more efficient. And at the time, I realized I was working with a handsaw to try and solve this problem for this CPG finance company. And I wanted to work with a more modern solution. So that's what brought me to Contentful and why I joined in the first place was basically I like to work with the most advanced technology to solve our customers' problems. And if we can't do that, then we should probably go invent something else, which is why I'm excited about what we're doing at Contentful and why I joined in the first place. Now, my team within the organization is a digital strategy team. And so that encompasses a handful of different things from technology strategy to demo engineering and architecture. And we work with everybody from customers and partners on the external side of things and internally with our engineering and product teams, marketing, finance, and legal. And so we have a very broad remit of working with customers. And if you sort of boil it down, it's where does technology align with business value, right? How is this solution going to unlock the value of the organization and the customer journey? And so my team day in and day out works with these customers to try and understand what are the major things that we can solve for and how can we have a better digital experience for their brands.
Thanks, JP, and welcome to the podcast. It's great to speak with you today. So why is technology infrastructure and architecture important in content development for a brand? And would the same be said of a retailer, or is there something different about what they need?
Yeah, I mean, so anyone can create content, right? I think since humans have been painting in caves way back in time, content is not new. Why content infrastructure is unique is it allows you to do this at scale. So, taking experiences from one to 100, one to many experiences to millions and millions of customers, right? And making those unique and engaging. So that's what you have to have an underlying infrastructure to support that growth. Otherwise, what you're really doing is you're just spinning up a lot of different, it used to be EC2s or virtual machines or whatever you're doing, but you're creating disconnected experiences if you're not doing this in a unified fashion with content infrastructure. So it's really important to have that, because if you don't have a solid foundation, you cannot really scale this effectively, right? And then why it's important to have the content development in the brand is around the architecture is that as you're scaling these experiences, if you want the customers to engage and really feel like they're part of the journey and part of the experience, it has to be done intelligently. There has to be some thought and some strategy behind why we're creating all of this content, because content intrinsically has value for the customer, but it has to be brought to life, right? And so, in this world that we live in right now, you have to be able to do that at scale. And in retail in particular, like retail has a challenging problem, right? Because not only do they have to do this digitally efficiently at scale, but they have to support the in-person experience too. And a lot of times what we see is these are sort of disconnected. They're treated as two separate experiences. Well, a lot of times we'll have a retail team we're working with within an organization and a digital team. And sometimes they don't actually talk together, right? Which is sort of crazy. But and what they're trying to do is create an experience across the touch points, whether you're in person or you're experiencing it on the mobile app, that's frictionless. So that there's not a disconnect between those experiences. Like I was booking a spa appointment for my wife, and I thought, okay, well, we're already booked at the hotel. This will be a piece of cake, right? They know who I am. I can set this up. They know what day I'm going to be there. They can offer me the packages. I called them up and they didn't even know who I was, even though they had my number, they had my appointment, they had my hotel reservation. And so those types of experiences, they need to be unified, right? They need to feel better together than just disconnected, right? So I think for retail in particular, it should be about efficiency of those experiences. So doing it at scale well, and having them be unified and frictionless. So it feels better when you're experiencing the brand in person and when you're experiencing it digitally. It should be a continuation of that customer journey.
I couldn't agree more with you that it needs to be a continuation of the customer journey. But let me ask you, 4 years ago to where we are today, 4 years later, I opened this whole podcast by saying the entire path to purchase has changed for the consumer. And I would say publicly, it's almost 100% digitally influenced. In that sort of world, how they browse, where they browse, what they browse, how they find content has all already changed. Brands were already focused on content 4 years ago, but they've invested significantly, I would say 2021, 22, 23. Like I feel most have muscled up. So why is content focus even relevant today? Because haven't most already muscled up?
Yeah, I mean, I think out of necessity, right? So like the pandemic brought a change that we haven't seen in our lifetimes, in my lifetime. And you didn't have a choice, right? Because people physically couldn't go to your retail locations. They couldn't go to your restaurants. And so I think that it was done without, the intention was to keep the customer as part of the conversation, but it wasn't done as an ongoing effort. Like, as there wasn't a thought behind, how are we going to accommodate these customers once things open back up? How do we get the products to them so they can come to the store and return it there? And we already know who they are, and there's not a bunch of challenge with that. So, if you look at that time period, Instagram, YouTube, TikTok, that's where all the information was being shared. It wasn't on corporate sites. People weren't going to corporate sites and asking about products, right? They're engaging with viral videos. They're engaging in things. In this world, content is the experience. So, whether you're consuming it in a feed or whether you're consuming it in 256 characters or a viral video, that is the engagement that a brand has with their customers. And you don't always control it. Right. And I think the brands that are excelling now are realizing that customers want to participate. They want to engage. They don't want to be treated as a transaction, right? They don't want to be treated as just one little point in this purchase process. And so you have to create different types of content for the different appetites that people have. We talk about digital diet in my daughter's class, right? And a lot in elementary school, there's this concept of digital diets, right? Well, it's true when you think of consumer journeys, right? Sometimes you want something really rich that is really detailed. And, that's like binging, right? I think of it binging versus browsing. Like, how deep are you going to engage with a brand? Are you going to go look up all the recipes? Are you going to buy all of the products? Or are you just browsing? Are you just sort of flitting through? And maybe you're somebody that could join the brand and be an engaging customer, or maybe you're not. And so, content is more pivotal than ever in the customer experience, and thought needs to be put into how the customer is engaging with it and letting them participate in a way that it's storytelling. It's a genesis of the brand. It's not just a transactional experience, because creating content for the sake of content, it's going to be something that people choose not to engage with for a period of time. Right? Creating niche content, getting people down deep rabbit holes where they're evangelizing your brand, where they're loving it, where they're posting it to their friends and family, where that video takes off and it just goes through the atmosphere as far as people getting engaged with content. That's where those real stories are being told, and they're being told not just by products and brands, they're being told by excited customers.
JP, we can't even get our mothers to listen to our own podcast. So
actually, Pete, episode 1 got 7 downloads. It was you, me.
Yeah.
My 2 brothers, that was 4. Our 2 moms are part of the mix for 5 and 6.
I think my sister, it was not my mom.
Bummer. My mom did download it, but she asked me last week when she was with me, what do you do for a living again?
Oh,
I said, I have a podcast.
You're a transponster.
Yes. She's like, you guys are actually on the airwaves? Like, what do you talk about? I made her listen to one, and she's
Shenandler Bong.
Very exciting. Thank you. And she tuned out in about 30 seconds.
JP, you talked about platforms. So what platforms really matter for content engagement these days? And how does Contentful provide services to help brands drive on?
Yeah, that's a great question, right? What is the foundation, right? How do you build these experiences at scale? And in the world we live in today, that's not just one solution. There's multiple solutions that come together to build these experiences, right? And I like to think of it in sort of 3 buckets, right? There's the essentials. These are the things that, like, if you don't have this, you can't build experiences, right? Contentful fits into that bucket, right? If you're a commerce player, if you're retail and CPG, if you're doing direct to consumer, e-commerce fits into that bucket as an essential platform technology. And then you have things like deployment, and delivery, translation, localization. These are technologies that, depending on where you are, like if you function in Europe and you have a lot of different languages you're supporting, that is essential. In the US and United States, sometimes it's less essential because there's less languages that you're supporting, generally speaking. But those are the must-haves, right? And those are the things that really fuel the customer experience from a content perspective, and from a product and brand perspective, from a commerce perspective. And then I have, like, the second bucket I like to think of as the nice-to-haves. And these type of platforms, they're usually done by more sophisticated teams they're thinking, how can I get more efficiency with my processes, with my operations for content? And these categories, a lot of times it's productivity, it's collaboration between groups, and it's quality and accuracy of content itself. So, like, is this performing? Is this something that we have customers engaging with? Like, how is it doing, right? And then that gets into, like, the last category in my mind, which is sort of transformative platforms. And these are things that allow a brand to stand out. They allow you to have engaging experiences on top of everything else. So with Contentful, this is like with our solution Ninetail, which allows personalized experiences. It drives data and insights. So you can have rich interactions with your customers. Because if you have content, you can get it to the right people. But if you don't have an understanding of who that right person is, then you're going to be challenged in serving the right content at the right time in the right place. And so these areas are more around data. So what is the customer data? How do we handle that? How do we find the right people and ensure that they're getting the right experience? And this is a core piece of the puzzle, right? Because all of this is built on the back of having content to power these experiences. So, with Contentful, we think of it as an ecosystem of technologies, right? You're building a digital experience platform. You're building a digital platform. Sometimes it's called a digital factory, where you create these experiences at scale. And to build this digital factory, you need multiple different types of platforms to support it at scale. So I would say essential ones for retail and CPG in particular are going to be a content platform like Contentful. They're going to be e-commerce solutions. And a lot of times translation, personalization, and data and insight.
All true. Resonates with me pretty well. Let me remind the public that today I'm speaking with JP, Senior Manager of Solution Engineering at Contentful.
I'm speaking with him too. It's not just you.
Well done. Congratulations.
Yeah.
See what happens when we're together.
See?
We can't keep to ourselves.
I know.
So that said, one of the areas I'd love to discover a value proposition at Contentful is around governance. I remember, 30 years ago, beginning my career when digital asset management systems were first coming out, we used to have this problem of we'd sign talent and we couldn't govern when contracts expired, and we'd have ads against them, and they would only lead to unnecessary lawsuits. So clearly responsibility, and I gave the most naive, trivial example. Responsibility around content governance matters. How does one create and roll out content governance? What does it even mean to the brand marketer? And then what is your value proposition for Contentful in governance of content? Because it's so important.
Yeah, so absolutely agree. I couldn't agree more. And that we could have a podcast just on this topic alone, right? It's a deep topic that I think a lot of organizations struggle with as they grow their brand experience globally. But content governance is not a thing that's done once and it's finished, right? I like to think of it like a mindset shift, like that an organization needs to embark on, much like, the move to digital was from a communications and content perspective. If you think about, what you need to succeed, I think there's sort of two things I've fundamentally learned that are important to this. One is you have to have a content strategy. You have to have a reason for the customer to engage with your brand, and you have to have a reason that content is important to them. It's surprising to me how often we'll talk to different organizations and we'll ask them, well, what is the value of this particular landing page, or what is the value of this call out for this hero or product? And they'll say, well, the customer needs to have that. They need to have that. It's part of the experience. But we don't really understand why it's important to the customer. And so this fundamentally starts with understanding the needs of the customer across the journey and making sure that they're getting those fulfilled by different types of content. So content strategy is key. And then the second one is having content from all places. So we like to call this connected or orchestrated content. That it's a fundamental understanding that content lives in different places, right? So if you have a digital menu board, there's a drive-through board at a restaurant, that content probably lives in a different system right now for most companies than the content that's actually in their in-store displays or in their mobile app. And so the reality is you can't force all that content to actually exist in one centralized location. For a long time, the content world tried to do that. And it's very problematic for multiple reasons. But what has been the predominant thought recently is that you have to connect this content together. So unlock the silos, right? Allow that content to be part of the experience, regardless of where it lives and regardless of which touch points the customer is going to experience through the life of that journey with a brand. And so you asked, what is the value proposition for Contentful? Like, what do we bring to this equation here? You have to have those pieces to truly unlock the potential of content governance. And the promise of that is having efficient content at scale, organizationally, that customers love, that you know how it performs, you know who's doing what. So things that are not happening, like you mentioned, Sri, like you're not getting in trouble with the legal team because something published earlier and it has something in there that it shouldn't have in there. You know what's published and when it's published and how it's published, right? And so Contentful brings a host of technologies to the table with structured content that allow you have control over both the content itself, so what's being put out there, and then also the users and the roles that interact with the content through the whole life cycle of content operation. So this can be from the first content editor, to the copywriter, to the legal team reviewing that. We have a host of workflow and collaboration tools which put the power in the business's hand to make decisions on how they grow this over time. And you mentioned so what does this mean to a marketer in particular? Marketers, most of the marketers we talk to, like brand marketers, and they're interested in three things. Consistency. So they want to make sure that that message is consistent across experiences and touch points, not disjointed. They want to make sure it's accurate, right? This goes to your concern around the legal, right? It's like, what if it went out and it wasn't supposed to have that content in there? How did that happen, right? How did that happen? And then the third is quality, right? Like how enriching is it to the customer experience itself? And so being able to use a platform like Contentful with these built-in governance capabilities and collaboration capabilities, we put the power in the hands of the digital teams to ensure that these can scale efficiently.
Okay, I got a follow-up for you on that one, JP. Clearly, the platform, Contentful platform, obviously has workflows which help a brand and a user actually go through the workflow of governance. But I'm curious to know if you offer any services around advising brands on governance, or when they choose to implement these workflows, hand-holding them to make sure they do it accurately.
Sri, absolutely. So we have a variety of professional services engagements where we can help our customers to understand the governance needs as they scale with the platform. Because a lot of times these are the first paths they've crossed this, right? They're trying to decide what's the right approach for us. Like, do we lock it all down and have a centralized team that actually has access? Or do we actually give some autonomy and some flexibility to different brands or different regions, right? And so those are important things to think through as a business when you're deciding how do you unleash the potential of governance and scale. So absolutely, we help our customers with that through our professional services engagements. And we also have a very rich network of partners. You had the friends on from VML last podcast with Contentful, and we work with folks like that all the time to have more of a change management or an organizational.
So JP, then thinking about content creation, what constitutes engaging content from your perspective, and what does it take for a CPG brand to create it on your platform?
Yeah, I'd say, well, I don't know. It's a target audience, your parents, because if it is, it sounds like we can't get them anyways. but if it's our target audience and we can actually reach them, I'd say it's a moving thing, right? Like when I started in the digital content world, content was informational. Right. It didn't need to be entertaining. It didn't need to be engaging. This is back in the days of like MySpace, right? So if something groundbreaking would be a GIF. Oh my gosh, the GIF is moving, right? They're going to just spend a lot of time on the site because it's something novel, right? And you still see that type of thing happening. It's sort of a necessity for certain brands. But what's more important is to handle more complex types of content these days. And to meet the needs of customers. So customer needs are evolving quickly, both in where they consume the content, as much as what the content actually is itself. So you have to have an approach that's an omni-channel approach, delivering it to all the different experiences that they might be engaging with. But you also have to keep this content rich and fresh and unique so that and maybe we can't get your parents, but if we could, we want to get that in front of them too, right? And if we knew their audience better, maybe we knew what they like better, we probably wouldn't go visit them on YouTube or on TikTok. We'd find other places to engage with them, right? And so, people have refined content palettes, right? The longer we've consumed digital content, the more interested we are in different things that sort of scratch our itch, right? And one of the folks we work with pretty often is Justin, who's a lead of digital over at Kraft Heinz. And he talks about this for the CPG space as this idea that, you have to have something compelling. And customers do have an appetite. They get hungry for certain kinds of content. Some folks might want to see certain content displayed where you're actually engaging with it and just learning about it. And some folks might want to actually see how it's used and maybe create recipes or create ideas on how the products are actually consumed themselves. These kind of things weren't really thought of previously. And so I think some of the bigger trends we're seeing is bringing the customer into the content creation experience, right? And bringing the customer into the brand experience in a way that we're not just, sharing things. We're actually having a two-way conversation. And we're making it rich, making it something that actually resonates with the customer.
So I'm going to go to the dreaded word. This word is a buzzword, but it's also a word that's producing outcomes, and that is AI, or artificial intelligence. In our CPG industry, the first role of AI has really been in the ML space and around data, insights, processing large volumes of transactional repetitive tasks, clean rooms. But the area where we've seen the most significant uptick, especially as it's an election
creation.
year, I'm going to say is content.
Yeah.
So we're seeing AI-based rendition of content left and right. And that's why I call it scary. So how does one manage AI to ensure what's out there is real, authentic, and not a bot speaking on someone's behalf, or not just...
Yeah. How do we tell it's real, right? I guess is sort of the question. What is the truth of the content, right? I mean, I think, like, to me, it's like the Scooby-Doo gang, right? In the Scooby-Doo series, there's always a monster, and you pull off the head at the end, and you're like, oh my gosh, that's somebody we already knew, right? And in this case, AI to me is sort of that, right? Like you mentioned, AI is not new. Like if you sort of go back, they pull the other mask off. AI sort of came from the deep learning realm, right? Applying data programmatically to problems you can solve. And then before that, machine learning. And so to me, it's not new, right? The Siri, the AI assistant, was launched. This is crazy. It's launched over 13 years ago. And that was an AI assistant, right? It didn't do super great commercially, but the reality was it was an AI-powered communication tool or bot. So in some ways, you could say that this has been happening for quite some time. Amazon, Netflix, all those organizations. But I think what you touched on, Sri, is that it's now so prevalent. It's everywhere. Like Gartner talks about that we're in the hype cycle right now, if you will, of content creation. And we hear from people that they're not concerned so much that it exists, that AI exists. They're concerned that it's everywhere and they don't know what's real or not, right? Is this written by a robot? Is this written by a human? Is it authentic to the brand? And so we fundamentally believe that, and this, some people probably would disagree with this, but there has to be trust and transparency, right? With the content. If there's no trust, like, if you immediately are believing this brand, they always use sort of junk, clickbait content, I just don't trust them, then you're going to have a hard time sharing much customer data with them. You're going to have a hard time putting your credit card information in, right? And so it all comes to, how the content is utilized. So trust and transparency is probably the most important thing at this moment in my mind. And the brands that are doing it well are doing it in a way that the customer understands what the content they're consuming is, right? And then the second part that's related to that is control, right? So like a brand has to actually understand and know what content that is being created, generated, either images or copy or whatever, what being generated is actually AI generated versus what is actually, created by humans, and what's a mix of both of those technologies, right? Or both the humans and the bots. But I think if you think about being able to understand those two things, then it becomes something where you can start to wield it with the business, right? And there's lots of technology. We have technology built into our platform, which can tell you which things are robot created and which things are human created. And you can categorize these types of content over time. We're seeing right now this, the industry took leaps and bounds with OpenAI, and we're seeing things catch up, I guess is what I would say. So you're starting to see almost, I liken back to like movies and entertainment, right? You'd have ratings available like PG-13 and R, things like that. I think we're going to start to see that with AI content. That would be my prediction, is in the future, you'll start to see that. Maybe it'll be metadata or semantic data, but it'll start to exist as part of your experience with content, and you can make choices about what you consume and what you don't consume. So for brands, we think the most important thing is to put the power in your digital team to make good decisions on who's engaging with content and who's not. So we give our customers the choice, like Klarna, to heavily engage with AI and use it for customer support experiences. We have other brands who actually just say, no, we have a no AI policy. We don't allow it in any of our content. And they put that in place, right? So it comes down to that, really, control and transparency.
Thank you, JP. I'm going to finish this out looking towards the future. Are there particular trends in the industry that you're paying close attention to as they have implications for AI and the ability to scale out meaningful experiences for consumers?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, there's a plethora of trends right now happening, I think. So you'll get my flavor on the ones I think are most important to CPG and retail. But I think if you put them in the buckets of what people are trying to do with enterprise content for digital experiences, it's how do we solve complex content needs? So how do we create variations of content? How do we treat customers with unique experiences like it's a one-to-one conversation? How do we engage them in the story of a brand? How do we make it less transactional? All of those things, those are complex content needs. You're not just going to a page and seeing a hero and saying, okay, great, I understand this brand. I'm gonna look at more what they have to offer. So it's doing this at scale. So, brands have 20, 30, 40, 50, or companies have 20, 30, 40, 50 brands and regions locally, hundreds of brands. How do you do this effectively at scale with AI, right? If you have one brand that's off doing their own thing, like, does the corporate legal team need to know about that? You probably do. And so these are things where it's like you have to have some intelligence about how you're doing it at scale. So those are the underlying sort of trends, I guess I'd see that sort of taper my recommendations here on what I see people doing, what is working very well. So I put these into the two categories, the sizzle category. So these are exciting ones. Like, these are the ones everybody's doing, and it's not a surprise, right? And these are things like personalization, right? Personalization is key to creating experiences that are engaging. And we see AI doing that in a lot of different ways, right? Both on decisioning and logic about what gets shown, but also on building profiles and building data around like a unified customer profile. What actually does this individual care about? What resonates with them, right? So there's lots of ways that AI is being leveraged in personalization and recommendation engines. In retail in particular, we see a lot of these sort of, I call them like Me Too categories, where it's like, okay, we're going to do style matching. We're going to do virtual try on. We're going to do AI product recommendations. And so these ones, to me, they're natural. It's help me find that thing easier. Like, take some of the journey that's painful or filled with friction and time. Take that out of the process and make it easier for me to find what I really want, what I really am excited about. So that's the ones we see most frequently. And I think you should do those, right? Organizations, if you're not thinking about personalization today, if you're not thinking about how customers engage with product in a more meaningful way, you're not making that easier for them to put their shoes in your brand experience, then that's something you should be thinking about right now. It's super important to do. But then there's the ones I would say they're a little more boring to most folks. But I actually think there's a huge amount of untapped value here. And I'll give you three of them. I have quite a few more, but three of them that I think are pretty exciting. One is automating SEO metadata. So it's something that when I ask marketing teams, like, what do you want to do every day? This is never on the top of their list, right? You don't want to create programmatic data on how to work search algorithms and get your content supported at a higher page ranking, right? They don't want to do that, right? Guess what? It can work with existing content, pick out the trends that are working well, and bring those to light more with customer experiences. And it's a very novel and easy thing to automate, right? Another one that sort of gets tossed to the wayside is language translation, especially for global brands, right? These AI agents are really, really good at natural language, right? They were trained on public web content. So they're good at putting together what's next in this conversation, even if it's a different language, right? And so this is an area where if you function in multiple regions, you function with multiple brands, you should absolutely think about using language translation as an AI technology. You have consistency with your brand canon and your brand guidance, and you're just changing the language essentially for that. And we'd say in the lower quality markets where you're not having, in-market translation services. And the last one, probably the one that I'm actually most excited about lately, is the concept of AI agents, right? So, and we see this a lot with like support agents. You're taking an existing body of knowledge and you're unleashing that, if you will, to the customer experience. So like, how many times have you gone to a website, you're trying to find the answer to something that's preventing you from getting value from a product, and you're met with tons of documentation, lots of things to sift through. You click. You finally get on the phone and just call somebody, right, out of frustration. Well, that experience is a lot of times not that much better as well, right? And so folks that are using these agents, they're training on the data. You and I both can go to that site right now and get all of this available information on the product and how it works. But the agent can do all the heavy lifting and put together the problem with the solution in a way that makes that experience very, very easy. And so this is just one approach of using AI agents for customer support and knowledge work, but there's a lot of other areas. And it's sort of one that sort of people see it as boring, but it actually can have a huge impact in existing customer and new customer experiences. So that's some of the things that I've been thinking about and that we've been hearing from our customers on the AI trends recently.
Wow, JP. I mean, no pun intended. You brought some power-packed content to this episode. And I can also see, while your title might say engineering, you are so passionate about the business uses of content and how they get applied every day on the job, not just in the CPG industry. But the last example you gave of just customer service and AI and the bots, that's already happening today. So hopefully our audience got a significant value out of this. But let me remind our audience, you can find all of our content simply by going to a web browser and typing cpgguys.com as the URL. And if you think you or your company has some thought leadership to contribute to our community discussion, drop us an email at contact@cpgguys.com. Maybe you can join us on the podcast just like JP did today. Don't forget to drop us a rating at cpgguys.com on the navigation bar at the top. The rating tells us how we're doing and if we're having the right conversations with the right companies. To our LinkedIn followers, we know we wouldn't exist. We wouldn't be 420 plus episodes deep without you. I can't believe we have 420 episodes, as we were doing the kickoff
Where
this morning.
have the days gone?
I have no idea, but we're very thankful that you have chosen to DM us, click, like, comment, advise us, bring the right conversations like JP did today. So JP, I can't thank you enough for coming on the show and having such an insightful discussion on content. Thank you for being with us today.
Yeah, thank you both for having me. I feel honored to get you both in the same room at the same time. And I wish you a wonderful time at your event. So it was a pleasure to be here.
We're honored we can be together ourselves.
I know. How about that, Sri?
So Peter, like I mentioned, JP brought some power-packed insights on content and managing content. So could you give us a quick summary of what we learned today?
Yeah, I was inspired by the fact that JP said what drew him to Contentful is that they're focused on aligning technology with business value, and that they allow for content infrastructure to deliver connected scale, and with scale, it allows for consumers to be truly engaged with a brand. That digital needs to be connected at the end of the day. While brands do that, when we talked about the difference in what retailers need, but the brand needs it too, is that they need the experience to connect the physical and the digital worlds together, because there is no I only shop online or only shop on store. I bring my device into every store I go in, and I make decisions as I'm walking a store floor. So I need a connected experience. And it really is about creating that seamless retail journey. Brands that accelerate are ones that allow consumers to participate wherever they are. I thought that was fairly important. And he used a really interesting term, digital diet matters. It really depends upon the consumer and what they're hungry for, their level of hunger, that will dictate what kind of content. But at the end of the day, whatever their digital diet, you need to tell a story. If you're not telling a story, you're not engaging the consumer. They're not going to believe you're authentic. Talked about three different types of solutions. One being essentials, which is where Contentful definitely plays. The nice to haves around things like productivity, collaboration, and content accuracy, and things that are very transformative, like their nine-tailed offering that enables really rich interaction. And Contentful is creating what is ultimately an ecosystem of technologies. Governance is very important. It's a journey. It's not a destination. To succeed, you need to have a content strategy, and you need to understand your content will exist in many places, and so it needs to come from many places. The dream of having a centralized location for all your content, it's unrealistic, and you're never going to be able to manage it that way. You need to unlock the silos, democratize the content to realize its true potential. And the the life cycle of content is what Contentful really helps to deliver against. I thought his talking about the message was very important, that it needs to be consistent, it needs to be accurate, and it needs to be a quality message for consumers to really have it resonate with them. A couple other things here, trust and transparency in the content. Consumers will see if you're not transparent, consumers will figure it out. Brands also need to differentiate between content that was human created versus content that was machine created. Tech is going to help them catch what is robot created. It's also consumers do the same thing. And when he looks towards the future, the trends that are important are the fact that, hey, we have very complex content needs to create meaningful stories that resonate with consumers. Personalization, critically important for things like a unified customer profile. But there are a lot of things you have to do that are pretty boring in nature, but they actually mean a lot. Things like automating SEO, metadata, language translation. I can't tell you how much I deal with clients just in Europe alone. Right there, 5 major countries, 5 different languages. If you can't do that at scale, you're hamstrung in your ability to really grow and engage consumers. And then other things that are important. You need to decide what is your philosophy on how consumers engage with you. Are AI agents okay? Maybe the agent isn't what faces them. Maybe it's a human agent who is using an AI agent to give them the answers which they communicate to the consumer. All of these are important around creating meaningful experiences. It seems like JP and his colleagues at Contentful are really focused on delivering the right experience for a brand so that they will excel.
Absolutely. What an insightful discussion on the continuous development of content, as well as all the different changes and trends taking place in the space. JP, Peter, thank you both for joining me today. We will see you on another episode of the CPG Guys soon.
The content in this podcast episode is provided for general informational purposes only. By listening to our episode, you understand that no information contained in this episode should be construed as advice from CPG Guys LLC or the individual author, hosts, or guests, nor is it intended to be a substitute for research on any subject matter. Reference to any specific product or entity does not constitute an endorsement or recommendation by CPG Guys LLC. The views expressed by guests are their own, and their appearance on the program does not imply an endorsement of them or any entity they represent. The views expressed by CPG Guys LLC do not represent the views of their employers or the entity they represent. CPG Guys LLC expressly disclaims any and all liability or responsibility for any direct, indirect, incidental, special, consequential, or other damages arising out of any individual's use of, reference to, or inability to use this podcast or the information we present in this podcast.